Being a member of the royal family seems like a blast, being famous all over the world and ridiculously rich, owning magnificent castles and jewels. But being part of the royal family also comes with very strict protocols and rules. Some of these heavily enforced guidelines are easy to follow, even sensible, but others are a bit ridiculous. From only being able to marry the right partner to never being allowed to sign an autograph. Here are 20 strict rules that the royal family has to follow. Number 19. Royal wedding dresses. There are many rules involved in a royal wedding. For starters, the Royal Marriages Act of 1772 requires all members of the royal family to obtain permission from the reigning monarch in order to marry, meaning that long before there was even a hint of getting down on one knee, the Queen had to approve plans for the proposal. Then, the future bride has to go through some pretty intense training courses on what it means to be royal. Everything from how to greet people to SAS training for her own security. But what about the centerpiece of any wedding, the wedding dress? Well, the Queen not only had to approve it first, but she was also one of the few people who could see it before the wedding. In fact, Her Majesty had to keep the dress hidden even before work on it began. And the dress has to follow a lot of rules, like no short hems, low necklines, or exposed shoulders. There are also rules about the tiara. It's tradition for tiaras to be worn only by married women, and the day of their wedding is the first time they can show one off, so it's a really important choice. The Queen had a 150-foot-long basement with her jewelry collection where the bride could choose from, but it's rumored that Her Majesty narrowed down the selection, limiting the future bride's choices. Before we continue with this video, hit the subscribe button and click the notification bell. Number 18. Royal family members must always wear a black suit when traveling. Sounds a bit grim, right? While people usually pack a fancy outfit just in case something amazing happens during their vacation and they're invited to a posh party, the royals have the protocol of preparing for an eventual death. Not so fun, right? Unfortunately, a death is never expected to occur, but it does happen, and the royal mourning protocol is perhaps one of the strictest. Out of respect for the deceased, the death of Queen Elizabeth II has made us reconnect with traditions. In these cases, there are rules for absolutely everything, and the dress code applies to each and every member of the royal family. That's why they're required to always wear a black suit when traveling, of course for a funeral and not just for going out around town. This rule started when Queen Elizabeth II learned of her father's passing in 1952. She was visiting Kenya with her husband, Prince Philip. At that time, she didn't have a black dress in her luggage, so she had to put together a black outfit for the trip back to London. That's why the rule was established to always be prepared for those occasions. Number 17. Shellfish and garlic should be avoided at all formal meals. Can you imagine sitting at the table with Her Majesty the Queen, surrounded by very important people, having a wonderful time, when suddenly one of the guests opens their mouth to talk to you and a strong smell of garlic comes out? It wouldn't be very pleasant, right? It would totally ruin the magical moment. And Queen Elizabeth II probably knew that all too well. It wouldn't be very pleasant, would it? It would destroy the magical moment, and Queen Elizabeth II probably knew it very well. That's why royal family members have to follow a very strict protocol about what they can and can't eat at the palace or when they're on duty. The Queen herself, who was not very fond of complicated meals such as bolognese, made it so that all palace meals had to be approved by her. Here's a list of things that royal family members shouldn't eat. Seafood is off limits when dining out or traveling abroad. This is due to the risk of food poisoning. Foie gras should also be avoided, as it's one of the most controversial foods due to animal cruelty and its production process. Also, because of potential bacteria, the royals can't be seen sick in public. They also shouldn't eat foods that are too spicy or exotic. They run the risk of not liking it or it not sitting well with them, which would be a disaster when visiting a foreign country that proudly serves that dish. Number 16. Royal staff members can't scold the Queen's dogs. This rule should apply to all dogs. No one but their owners should be able to scold them. Jokes aside, this is a royal rule that the royal staff must follow to the letter. The Queen's special treatment for her dogs is believed to have continued over the years. Ever since she got her first pet as a special gift from her parents for her 18th birthday, she's always treated the adorable corgis like family members. And since hers is a royal family, the pets have to be treated accordingly. The little dogs sleep in the corgi's room and are taken care of by two footmen, known as Dog 1 and Dog 2. The dog's basket sheets are changed every day. But that's not all. These dogs live better than most people. They get fresh gourmet food served for dinner. They have their own chef in the kitchen at Buckingham Palace. The Queen lets her dogs roam freely around the palace, and even if they do something wrong, the staff can't scold them. It's no secret that Her Majesty was a dog lover. At the time of her passing, she had 3 dogs, 2 corgis, and 1 dorgie, which is a mix of a dachshund and a corgi. In fact, the Queen is credited with creating the new breed. Number 15. Women should refrain from wearing wedge shoes in the presence of the Queen. When regular people don't like a fashion item or a style, they just stop wearing it. But when the Queen didn't like something, things changed. Her Majesty didn't like wedge shoes, so no woman in the royal family could wear them in her presence. A bit too strict. Meghan and Kate avoid wedges with the Queen. Kate wears them at events without her. Meghan hasn't worn them since May 2018. But even though neither the Duchess of Sussex nor the Duchess of Cambridge dares to face Her Majesty wearing wedges, Kate has been seen wearing them at official engagements without the Queen around. Meghan, for her part, hasn't been seen in them since she joined the royal family in May 2018. Even though it's an unofficial rule, it's kind of a precedent set by the Queen herself for the rest of the royal family. So now you know, if you can't imagine living the rest of your life without wedge shoes, you're not cut out to be part of the royal family. It's pretty simple. It's either the shoes or becoming a member of the royal family. That choice should be pretty easy for most people. Number 14. When the Queen finishes eating, everyone else has to stop too. Eating at the Queen's table must have been quite the experience. Imagine the kind of stories she could bring to the table. But anyone lucky enough to feast with Her Majesty had to follow 2 extremely important rules. Rule number 1, don't sit down before the Queen. Even at crowded receptions with hundreds of people, everyone had to follow Her Majesty's lead when it came to approaching the table. No one, and I mean no one, could sit down before she did. Even at crowded receptions with hundreds of people, everyone had to follow Her Majesty's lead when it came to approaching the table. No one, and I mean no one, could sit down before she did. Rule number 2, you can only eat while Her Majesty is eating, since everyone has to follow the monarch's lead. That also applies to starting and finishing a meal. When she started eating, then, and only then, could you take your first bite. But if you were really hungry, you had to eat super fast, because as soon as the Queen finished eating, no one else could keep eating. These rules might seem a bit outdated. Perhaps that's why, if someone didn't follow protocol, she didn't get too offended. In fact, there are many rules that the Queen herself broke during her reign. Once, she unzipped a zipper from her finger to make a foreign prince feel less awkward, since he had confused his with a dessert plate. Number 13. Royal family members must wear their hair, makeup, and nails in natural colors. Since they are constantly in the spotlight of international public opinion and represent the British crown wherever they go, it's essential for royal family members to follow a certain dress code. There are a lot of very strict rules that were established before the current royal family guidelines that must be followed to the letter. Specifically, there are a number of very specific and hard-to-follow rules. When it comes to makeup, hairstyles, and nails, the rules are pretty intense. A lot of people like to express themselves with colorful nails, but not the royals. Fake nails and colorful ones are considered tacky by the royal family and, therefore, are banned. It's also understood that they shouldn't go crazy with their hair. You'll never see Meghan or Kate rocking a bright blue mane with neon feathers. In fact, their hair always has to look natural and effortless. Just like with makeup, sticking to the same theme as the other rules, they have to keep it neutral and classy. Think about it. What the Kardashians wouldn't do is the royal makeup routine. Apparently, they are also totally banned from touching up their makeup in public, but they always have to look perfect. Well said. Royal life isn't as easy as it looks. Number 12. Royal brides must carry myrtle in their bouquets. Choosing the perfect bridal bouquet can be a colossal task. Everything has to be perfect. You have to consider the color, texture, shape, and the season. Not to mention that many brides often choose flowers with a special meaning to them. Now, myrtle might seem like a very simple plant, not worthy of the most powerful royal families in the world. But in fact, this simple plant is one of the royals' favorites for bridal bouquets and many other important floral arrangements. Myrtus communis, simply known as myrtle, has been a crucial component of the crown's signature aesthetic for a long time. Meghan Markle's bridal bouquet included myrtle from Queen Victoria's own garden. Yes, that's right, it's from the great-great-grandmother of Queen Elizabeth. This myrtle plant has been cared for over 170 years since she decided to grow a myrtle plant used in her own bridal bouquet. Since Queen Victoria, all royal brides have carried myrtle from this same plant. This means that from Queen Victoria to Meghan Markle, all royal brides have carried sprigs of myrtle from stems planted at Osborne House on the Isle of Wight by Queen Victoria in 1845, and from a plant grown from the myrtle used in the Queen's bridal bouquet in 1947. It's a really beautiful tradition. 12 times the Queen chooses the tiara that the bride wears at a royal wedding. In the collective mind, tiaras are more of a whimsical accessory than a historical artifact. And unlike a crown, for example, the only tiara rules most people know about are that one thing makes you sparkle fabulously. But just like with dinners, corgis, or dress codes, there are actually quite a few rules related to tiaras and the royal family. As we mentioned before, only married women in the royal family can wear tiaras, which makes the process of choosing a bridal tiara even more special. Whether they are blood princesses or marrying into the royal family, it's understood that they will wear a tiara for the first time on their big day. However, in England, the head of state can choose the tiara for the royal bride. Whether they are blood princesses or marrying into the royal family, it's understood that they will wear a tiara for the first time on their big day. However, in England, the head of state can choose the tiara for the royal bride. It's known that Her Majesty rejected the first tiara chosen by Meghan Markle because it was rumored to be from Russia. It's believed that when Prince Harry found out about this, he got really angry. Tiaras can only be worn after 5 p.m. Except for weddings, they are lent to a person for their entire life. They become their signature look, so to speak. Have you noticed that once a member of the royal family wears a tiara, no one else wears it afterward? Number 11, most people think of bad omens when they think of crows. These mysterious and enigmatic birds have been surrounded by legends and myths for centuries, especially the ones that reside in the magnificent Tower of London. It's not known when the crows arrived at the tower, but it's believed that the future of the country and the kingdom depends on them staying there. The legend says that if there aren't exactly 6, not 7, not 5, but 6 crows living there, both the tower and the monarchy will fall. The first royal observatory was installed in the northeast turret of the White Tower. According to legend, John Flamsteed, a 17th century astronomer and the first royal astronomer, complained to King Charles II that the crows were interfering with his work. The king, very fond of Flamsteed's work, ordered the birds to be destroyed, only to be told that if the ravens left the tower, the White Tower would fall and a horrible disaster would befall his kingdom. Naturally, the king changed his mind and, just in case, as a precautionary measure, decreed that at least 6 crows must remain in the tower at all times. These days, they are very pampered crows. They have a raven master who takes care of them, and they are regularly checked by expert veterinarians. Number 10, they must accept every gift with elegance. When you're a member of the royal family, gifts come from all over. But no matter what the gift is, whether it's a luxury car or a chicken, they always have to accept presents in the same way, with grace, elegance, and class. And even when they are given so much, it doesn't really matter because the Queen decides who gets what. And there's a second catch. According to British royal guidelines, Gifts offered by private individuals residing in the UK, who are not personally known to the royal family member, must be declined when there are doubts about the appropriateness or the motives of the gift donor. For example, when Harry and Meghan got married, many fans sent them gifts, but they had to return them. In total, it was almost $9 million in gifts. Number 9. The game Monopoly is banned in the royal house. Many families have had fights over playing Monopoly, some more aggressive than others, sure, but not royalty. To avoid any kind of dramatic situation, the Queen banned them from playing Monopoly. Now that's solving a problem at its root. He argued that the game can be too vicious, and he wasn't wrong. It was Prince Andrew who let this royal secret slip in 2008, during a visit to the newly renovated headquarters of the Leeds Building Society's 2000 on Albion Street. Before leaving, the Duke of York received a Monopoly board game as a gift for his visit. Unfortunately, he had to politely decline it. He just said that we're not allowed to play Monopoly at home. And even though we peasants don't identify with the protocol and lifestyle of royalty, this is a rule that many of us understand perfectly. A dispute in a normal family usually gets resolved with a hug. 1. Excuse me, but how do you think royal families resolve their disagreements? That's how wars start. Royal protocol is there for a reason, for sure, but sometimes it can feel a bit odd. Prince Philip was required to walk 2 steps behind his wife, Queen Elizabeth II, when they were in public. It's a rule that makes some sense. She is the reigning monarch and must walk in front as a sign of respect. There are specific orders of precedence. The royal family follows an order in processions. A prince before a queen is unthinkable. They enter the rooms, sit down, and walk in order of precedence, which is basically the same order as the line of succession to the throne. As you can imagine, it would be unthinkable for a prince to walk in front of a queen, and the royal couple was no exception. Queen Elizabeth II was at the top of the royal family hierarchy, which is why she always walked in front. All right, so far so good. But what happens when this leads to Prince Philip's head and Her Majesty's being on opposite sides of a theater curtain? Well, that's exactly what happened when the couple positioned themselves while listening to the national anthem in Salisbury on June 13, 2017. As you can see, this comical scene really took place. But rules are rules, so the Duke of Edinburgh had to stand with his face covered until everyone sat down again. Number 8. No politics allowed. If you visit the official monarchy website, it clearly states in black and white, or in this case, blue and white, that as head of state, the Queen has to remain strictly neutral regarding political matters with no ability to vote or run for office. However, Her Majesty performs important ceremonial and formal functions in the government of the United Kingdom. The law doesn't prohibit the monarch from voting in elections, but it's considered unconstitutional. However, Her Majesty performs important ceremonial and formal functions in the government of the United Kingdom. The law doesn't prohibit the monarch from voting in elections, but it's considered unconstitutional. Think about it. Prime ministers change roughly every 5 years if everything goes as planned. And every time there's an election, a prime minister from opposing political parties can be elected. If the reigning monarch were to publicly support or criticize one or the other, it would create unnecessary chaos. So, does this rule apply to all the other members of the royal family? In general, yes. Well, sort of. Meghan and Kate had to drop any political affiliations and activities the day they married into the royal family, and neither Prince William nor Prince Andrew has ever declared their political preferences. They're not bound by any written law, but they would be heavily criticized if they did. So, number 7. The women in the family have to learn how to sit like a member of royalty. If I asked you to sit like a member of royalty, what would you do? If you can't find an answer, don't worry. Sitting like a member of royalty isn't something that comes naturally, not even for the royal family members, and that's why they have to take courses and training to get it right. And the rules are very different for men and women. For example, when it comes to etiquette rules, one of the worst things a woman in the royal family can do is sit with her legs crossed at the knee. The legs and knees must be kept together at all costs, although crossing them at the ankle is perfectly fine. There aren't many ways to sit following this rule. However, the Duchess of Cambridge, Kate Middleton, has managed to create her own signature pose. They call it the Duchess's lean, and it's the posture she adopts when sitting, which involves keeping her knees and ankles tightly together and tilting her legs to one side. This posture allows her to maintain an elegant and modest stance while making her legs look longer. In fact, it's also known that the late Princess Diana sat exactly the same way. Number 6. Royal family members must enter a room or meeting in order. As we mentioned earlier in this video, there are very strict rules that each member of the royal family has to adhere to if they want to remain in the family, and that includes the order of precedence, which is essentially the order of who is next in line for the throne. When Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip were alive, the order was first Queen Elizabeth as the reigning monarch and head of the family, followed by her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, also known as Prince Philip and Her Majesty's spouse. Then came the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, formerly known as Prince Charles and his wife Camilla, but now known as King Charles III and Queen Camilla Consort, followed by the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, better known as Prince William and Kate Middleton. Number 5. I think a relationship can consume you quite a bit when you're younger, and next up are the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, known as Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. Prince Harry is fifth in line to the British throne, which means he's probably never going to be king, but neither was his grandmother, who became the longest reigning monarch in history. Number 4. No autographs allowed. Sometimes royalty is referred to as the firm. This term was coined by King George in statements where he said that he and the rest of the royals weren't a family. They were a firm. He was probably referring to the fact that they can't function like a normal, traditional family, considering all the obligations and rules they have that extend into every nook and cranny of their personal and professional lives. One of those rules is that they are never, under any circumstances, allowed to sign autographs. If you're a fan of the royals, you've probably noticed that they never stop to sign autographs for their fans, like celebrities and athletes do. Even though this rule might seem insignificant by Tausendian, it's actually one of the most important that the royal house has put into practice. The reason for this rule goes beyond just etiquette. The royal family is possibly the most famous family in the world, and their role goes far beyond public appearances. The reigning monarch is the head of state of the Commonwealth. If one of the royals were to sign an autograph and someone forged their signature, just imagine the international and political chaos that could ensue. Could be a global disaster, and it all would have started with a simple and innocent autograph. Number 3. Never touch the monarch's accessories. You rarely saw Queen Elizabeth II in public without one of her signature handbags. According to some sources, she owned over 200 of them. But the Queen's handbags weren't just for show. Even though she looked fabulous with them, her handbags served to send non-verbal signals to her staff, and these subtle signals helped her gracefully navigate awkward conversations at any moment. For example, if the handbag was on one part of her arm, it meant the conversation was going well, so they should leave Her Majesty alone. But on the other hand, if the handbag moved a little lower on her arm, it meant they needed to get closer to the monarch and come up with an excuse to get her out of the situation immediately. A total genius. A simple handbag turned into a tool for sending secret messages. This is the number 1 reason why no one was allowed to touch the Queen's accessories. Just imagine how awkward it would be if someone accidentally touched her handbag, triggering a whole secret operation from the staff. It would be funny to see, but in any case, that's how important the accessories are. Not being able to carry bags, I wonder what King Charles III will use for the same purpose. Number 2. Family members can only get engaged or married with the Queen's prior approval. It shouldn't surprise us, after everything that's happened recently with Meghan Markle and Prince Harry, that the Queen had the power to approve or disapprove someone marrying into the royal family. It all started in 1772 when Parliament passed a law that imposed strict conditions for members of the British royal family to enter into a valid marriage. The law clearly states that no descendant of George II can marry without the consent of the reigning monarch. This law, although quite strict, is still in effect today. Since its creation, over 100 marriages have had to be approved by the reigning monarch. No marriage has taken place without her approval. The most famous example was the Queen's own sister, Princess Margaret. In the early 1950s, she fell in love with Peter Townsend, a married RAF officer who worked in the royal household. In 1952, the king died and Isabel became queen. Townsend divorced his wife and proposed to her early the following year. However, under the Royal Marriages Act of 1772, Margaret needed the Queen's permission to get married. But since Townsend was divorced and the Church of England had strict rules about remarriage after divorce at that time, the Queen did not grant Margaret's request. To make matters worse, the Queen sent Townsend to Belgium for 2 years to prevent the couple from having an affair. The relationship between the two sisters never fully recovered from that. Number 1. Everyone must address the Queen properly. Yes, you guessed it. The rules and protocols don't just affect the royal family, but also anyone in their circle. If you ever addressed the Queen, you would have to use the correct formal address, which is Your Majesty. Every time you address her, you should do it as ma'am, but pronounced with a short A, like in jam. As for the traditional way, for men it's just a nod of the head, while women should do a small curtsy. But some people prefer to just shake hands in the usual way, depending on their preferences. It's not clear what would happen if someone disobeyed these rules, but they probably wouldn't see any member of the royal family again. As for other titled members of the royal family, the first way to address them is Your Royal Highness, followed by ma'am or sir. As you can see, being a member of the royal family isn't all about glitz and glamour. There are countless rules, obligations, protocols, and traditions to follow. And you, if you had the chance to become a member of the royal family, would you take it or pass it up? Tell us about it. Also, check out some other cool things that are popping up on the screen right now. Until next time.